Welcome to the IDP Plus, formerly IDP Guys, Free Agency Palooza. It's day one of the tampering period, and boy, there's a lot of news impacting your fantasy football rosters. And I have three outstanding gentlemen with me to break it down today and share a lot of insights that's going to help you with your redraft and your rookie and your dynasty drafts as a result of all of this. And I'll let them introduce themselves. And let's start with Sean.
Yeah, Sean Teague. You can find me on the X at Sean8386. And just so all the NFL teams are paying attention, I am a free agent and could use several millions of dollars. So send it my way, please.
I hear you, Sean. I wouldn't mind a little bit of that cash myself. I wouldn't mind being the agent of some of these folks.
Yeah.
Steve, also known as Average Joe.
Yep, Steve here at Average Joe's _FF on the X. I'm super excited for a lot. I mean, I know it's day one, but this is always fun.
Absolutely, and it's just beginning. I saw a meme today that says, "Wow, what a great first week," and it's only Monday. So that describes how today went. And of course, we have the mad scientist with us, Aaron.
Yeah, I don't know who your third outstanding gentleman was, but he couldn't make it, so you get me instead. You can find me on Twitter at FFMadScientist. So you get me today.
Glad to have all you experts here, and don't sell yourself short for a second there, mad scientist. That's for sure. I know your work; it's fantastic. All righty. So, first question I have for all of you. And by the way, I'm Ricky Rodrigue. I am one of the co-owners at IDP Plus, and I'm at Ricky Rod 66. Might help if I did that as well. But the first question for our esteemed colleagues here is, what was your biggest surprise of the day? Now, from an audience perspective, just so you all know, this isn't going to be about length of contracts or salaries. Really, from a fantasy football perspective is what we're looking for today and what we'll be talking about tonight. There'll be a lot of times in other shows to talk about Robert Hunt's $100 million contract as offensive guard for the Panthers, but that's not what we're trying to do today. So with that, we'll go back to Sean as a starting point. Sean, biggest surprise today from a signing or non-signing perspective?
Yeah, it's got to be Bryce Huff for me. I wasn't expecting him to cash in as well as he did. I like it. I just wasn't expecting, a guy who's been more rotational over the last few years to go get a pretty decent bank like that.
Yeah. Someone who's played less than 50% of the snaps, very productive, but less than half the snaps. So we're going to actually come back and talk about him when we get to the edge part of the show. Steve, your thoughts?
I would say the biggest surprise to me was actually Tony Pollard to Tennessee, just because of the similar skill set that he brings, kind of like Tajay Spears has with Tennessee. So I thought that was kind of a shocking. I thought he had some buyers out there, but that was not one I had seen coming.
And I had Josh
Steve,
Jacobs.
We will talk about him and the running backs as well. Oh, sorry, Aaron, go ahead.
No, it's all right. I had Josh Jacobs to the Packers. I didn't see the Packers. They weren't on my list of free agent destinations or players in this, and they got arguably the second best, maybe best running back out of the class. Didn't see that coming.
That is true. The Packers tend not to spin in free agency, and they took a different twist this year. They certainly did. And so we were going to start with edge and linebackers as our first two categories, but one of our loyal listeners and participants, Brian, has put into the chat here, screw Kirk Cousins, so mad at my Vikings. My Vikings suck, screw Kirk Cousins. Other than that, I think Brian's having a good day. Brian, yeah. So let's start with Kirk Cousins. Kirk Cousins moving to Atlanta. Let's talk about the Atlanta side first, and then we'll go to the Vikings. Let's start with Steve on this one. Steve, how do you feel about the fit with Cousins in Atlanta? You think it's a good move for the skill players in Atlanta, et cetera? What's your thoughts there?
I don't hate it for the skill sets for Atlanta. Like Brian, I'm actually kind of I'm kind of disappointed in Kirk. I felt like he was better in the Minnesota Vikings. I thought he just knows that offense. He knows the personnel really well. It was perfect for him. And for him to go to Atlanta, I get it. Start somewhere new. He definitely got a bag for this one. But as far as the whole look at the holistic aspect, Kyle Pitts, Drake London, Bijan. I mean, you're going to obviously, I think they have the 8th or 9th pick still in this draft. So they're probably going to go another wide receiver, which I wouldn't be shocked. Like, as far as a fantasy aspect goes, all of those players have absolutely skyrocketed. I saw people already moving Bijan to number 1 when it came to Dynasty. I saw Drake London already. I mean, every Dynasty I saw, at least 2 or 3 of these guys hit my, trade block. So those guys' value have absolutely skyrocketed. Like anything else, though, there is going to be a little bit of a slow period. I don't think it's going to be gun blazing type of thing. I think he probably would have had a great start when it came to the Minnesota Vikings, but good for Kirk, good for this offense. I think everybody who's an Atlanta fan is super excited, especially since Arthur Smith's gone, and now you've got your quarterback for the next few years.
So, Aaron, building on what Steve was saying, is Kirk Cousins now a top 12 quarterback with a couple of these weapons? Maybe it's not that different. Is he maybe top 15? Where do you see Kirk probably kind of shaking it out in your head here early on with this change?
This is my theme for the day, kind of. It's the weapons that are the beneficiaries got a big bump. The free agents themselves, I didn't think did very good. I don't really see this as a big win for Cousins. It's a lateral move at best. Like, sure, he gets Bijan, but would you rather have London and Pitts or Jefferson and Addison? I think I'd rather have Jefferson and Addison.
And Hawkinson.
And Hawkinson, yeah. And I just, even you were saying Pitts and Drake London were skyrocketing in value. I'm getting none of them. And even Bijan, remember Bijan's number 1. You're going to go, you add Kirk Cousins, who's going to throw like crazy, not check down all that much. And it's like the Falcons are just going out of their way to find ways to not run the ball with Bijan Robinson. It's great for Pitts in London. I'm not going to have any of them at their cost. And I think it's a lateral move at best for everyone else. I'm not any higher on Cousins, maybe lower, if anything. I liked him in Minnesota far better.
Yes, Sean. So you don't see Drake London finished, depending on your scoring system, probably as a number 4 wide receiver, low end wide receiver 3. Do you see him jumping up to the, higher 3s or low 2s range from a wide receiver perspective?
Maybe higher 3s. I'm not ready to just boost him to the moon just yet. Like Steve was saying, it's going to take them a little while to get going, to get clicking. If anything, I think Kyle Pitts is the biggest beneficiary here, just because of, we've seen how Kirk has really targeted Hawkinson the last couple of years. That shorter game, intermediate game there. So I think he gets the biggest boost if, they actually turn him loose and use him the complete opposite way that Arthur Smith used him. So I agree with these guys. I think they've nailed it. It's a good financial move for Kirk Cousins, but fantasy wise, it doesn't really change him. And I don't really see Bijan shouldn't really be boosted that much by this. I don't see that, because the NFL is still by committee at running back. So somebody else could jump in there and really screw that up for him. But I do think Kyle Pitts and Drake London benefit the most here.
Okay. So let's go to the Minnesota side of this. Last year, Justin Jefferson was a number 2 overall pick, number 1 overall pick, occasionally number 3, but generally in that top 3. Now, at this point, his quarterbacks are Jaron Hall or Josh Dobbs or etc. With what's left on the quarterback market, we just had Jacoby Brissett in the last hour go to the Patriots. There's really not a lot left. So assuming they do trade up and get a rookie quarterback, or maybe a Carson Wentz or a Sam Darnold, what round is Justin Jefferson slipping to for you gentlemen in terms of, in a 12-team redraft type of league? Is he a second rounder, third rounder? Is the talent so great that he's still a first rounder? Thoughts? Let's start with Aaron.
Yeah, I think he's still got to be a first rounder. We've seen it even with Chase last year. What do you have? Jake Browning as his quarterback half the year? He was still pretty good. Garrett Wilson without Rodgers. These guys, a lot of them, they're just so good that you're not going to drop him too far. I'm still taking him as he's probably still my wide receiver 1 off the board. I know Lamb, Chase, they're all in one group, but I don't love it. It's not what I wanted to see for him, but I'm the JJ McCarthy guy. So this kind of is going to line up with me, in my hopes of them drafting JJ McCarthy. But I think the other thing that could be useful here is they're going to be better off as a whole, I think, because I'm just looking through some of my free agent signing notes here. I think they got a lot better on defense. They got Grenard and Cashman. I like both those signings. So they may be a overall better team and not just a one-sided aerial attack. But I don't love it for Jefferson, that's for sure. But it's not until he gives us a reason to not trust him. I'm still taking him high.
And Brian also posted, by the way, he said he wanted to retire a Viking. I'm so disappointed in him. And I said we weren't going to talk about money, but when you talk about the type of money they guaranteed him, I think it was $100 million. He has a chance to push his earnings to over $400 million. He hasn't done so bad as a 4th-round pick, being the second quarterback drafted after Robert Griffin a few rounds later. He's done okay for himself. All right, so let's shift gears. Like I said, we'll come back to quarterbacks and so forth a little bit later, but let's switch over to the defensive side of things, and we'll go with where Aaron was just going with it. He was talking about the Vikings defense. Looks like Danielle Hunter will definitely be moving on as the Vikings sign Grenard from the Texans. They signed Van Ginkel from the Dolphins, and at linebacker they added Blake Cashman.
That's the third one I forgot. Good call, Van Ginkel. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. So those Ivan Pace shares, I don't know if y'all hear that in the background, but I just heard a flushing of the toilet because the Vikings defense with Flores tends to have one linebacker that's productive, and they didn't give Cashman that money to be second fiddle. At least that's my opinion. Steve, you agree?
Yeah, it's kind of disappointing because I loved some Ivan Pace. I grabbed him late in several drafts last season, and he performed really well. And I don't know if any of you guys have been part of Yahoo or anything like that as well, but Yahoo had him at a 0 projection for the longest, and I loved it as a nice little mental game against my opponents. So for me, kind of disappointing because I wanted to see more. I get it because he's an undersized linebacker. And in this league, sometimes you do need that size. I can speak from it as a Dallas Cowboy fan. We just couldn't stop the run with undersized players. So I get it. But at this point, Evan Pace in redraft, I don't think has any value, possibly a hold when it comes to Dynasty.
Yeah, I think I'd hold him in Dynasty because of the injury history Cashman has had. So you bring up a great point there on the Dynasty side of things. Looks like Gary Van Dyke's agreeing with you, who has joined us in the comments as well. So Sean, going over to you. Grenard got paid fairly well. He has been injury prone. So let's talk about Grenard. Your thoughts on him, and was that a risk worth taking from Minnesota? And do you see Grenard as potentially becoming a top 24 edge from an IDP perspective?
If he's top 24, I think he's towards the middle of that or towards the end of that. I'm not ready to boost him to the moon just yet because of the injury concerns. And I think it had more to do with D'Amico Ryans really unlocking his potential there. I don't know how Flores is going to use him. I actually think Van Ginkel will be the surprise out of this group as the kind of Swiss Army knife there. I think it's solid. I'm not ready to just boost him to the moon for sure.
If you were picking right now, Van Ginkel or Grenard, who would be your pick in an IDP redraft league, Sean?
I would probably start with Grenard for sure. I think Van Ginkel will come on because there's probably going to be an injury to both Cashman and Grenard. That's how I feel about him. So Pace could find his way back in, and Van Ginkel could find his way in there. So I wouldn't be dropping any of these guys just yet.
Aaron, your thoughts, Van Ginkel or Grenard?
Van Ginkel. He said it proper, or the best though. The Swiss Army knife. I love Van Ginkel. I think this is what I love most about Minnesota today. There were my favorite 4 IDP guys that were available. They signed 3 of them, and the only one they didn't get was Christian Wilkins, who the Raiders gave a
Oh.
bag to. So if they could have gotten, I'm a Saints fan, but if they could have also gotten Wilkins, I may have just gotten a Vikings jersey. I love what they did on defense. Don't really love what they did at quarterback, but I guess you can't win them all. So I love it, though. I love Van Ginkel. He's someone I just, since beginning of last season, even first few weeks, I love him. He's awesome.
Aaron, I don't know if you can see over my shoulder, but I've got my LSU helmet, and I'm also a Saints fan as well. And the one thing us Saints fans have going for us is that we're not the Panthers fans.
Fair enough.
Exactly. All right, so Steve, let's Drew Tranquil. Kansas City re-signed him after pulling him over from the Chargers a year ago. He's always been injury prone, but they haven't re-signed Willie Gay yet. Where do you see Tranquil from a redraft perspective next year? Are we seeing a top 36 linebacker with Tranquil? Or you think there's going to be a platoon? Are you worried about Leo Chanel from Wisconsin? What are your thoughts there on Tranquil?
I like Chanel. I'm a little concerned just because I feel like Kansas City, as far as linebackers go, it's really one linebacker who does actually really anything for that defense, which is going to be Nick Bolton. When I'm looking at what if Bolton's hurt, which he had some injuries, sure, obviously Tranquil can, really come in well. He's obviously somebody who can go off the edge if he needs to. But I'm concerned of him being actually a strong value in at least redraft. Like, I don't know if I quite want to grab him there. I think if you're in a deeper league, obviously Dynasty, he's a great one. I've got a few shares of him in a couple of my Dynasty leagues because of the ability of, again, filling in. He did get signed, which obviously they do believe in him because he did have that really big year for, the Chargers before he came over. And maybe it's just kind of another year in the system to kind of help him out and get comfortable. But I think realistically, the Kansas City Chiefs, it's Bolton as far as the linebacking core, and then everyone else kind of gets second fiddle with everything there.
So Gary Van Dyke just asked the question, how does Willie fit in? And he's referring to Willie Gay. And with Willie being a free agent and the way the money's going to have to go, I don't know if Kansas City is going to re-sign Willie Gay. Aaron, you agree with that?
Yeah, that was my answer. I don't think Willie does fit in. He's not old. Like, he's getting up to, he's going to be 27. Injury history, battled injury on and off last year, neck injury. I think that's my answer. I don't think Willie does fit in. I don't think they bring him back.
Okay. I think I agree with you on that. It'll be interesting to see where he does land, though. He's got the athleticism if he can put it together. Okay, Sean, we're going to switch over to back to Carolina and Frankie Louvu. A couple of years ago, Louvu was using the edge, a lot of sacks. They moved him a lot more, well, basically on the inside this year. Was very productive, and he's going to the dreaded Washington Commanders, who he is the only signed linebacker they have on their roster right now. Thoughts on Louvu going into the Dan Quinn system that he's going to bring over from Dallas, thinking back to Van Der Esch and so forth. Thoughts on Louvu?
Yeah, so is he the Micah Parsons now? Is that what I'm getting out of this? Is he getting that role?
What do you think?
I sure hope
we'll ask our colleagues the same question.
I think if they're smart, they turn him loose and send him outside on the edge and let him get after the quarterback. Because you still got the big guys up front, Payne and Allen, blocking up that middle, and then I like the signing of Dorrance Armstrong there as well. So I think you get those two on the outside. I think that's the play. I think you send him after quarterback. That's what he did so well a few years ago. I feel like Carolina got away from that. I don't feel like Carolina did anything good last year, if I'm being honest. Offense, defense, anything. So I think it's a good move for them, and I think Dan Quinn's smart enough to utilize his skill set.
Steve, where do you see him playing Louvu? You see him on the edge more? You see him at the mic? You see a combination? What are you thinking?
It's tough to say because I've been obviously watching very closely with Dan Quinn and how he's been able to take the weapons that he had for Dallas. I thought he did a great job when he had Micah going back and forth from linebacker to edge. When they moved Micah to official edge, I thought it ruined him. I'll be honest with you. As far as a fantasy perspective, I don't think it was as bad. I think Micah had some good games, but he disappeared too many times. And when you have a talent like that, where you're able to kind of move him around, I think that was his secret weapon. I'm afraid that could be the same situation with Luvu. If you're going to keep him at linebacker, that's fine. I think he still has really strong value. But if you're going to utilize him properly, you've got to move him around. And I just don't know if Dan Quinn is, I don't know. He just tends to, he starts one way, kind of changes it up. I don't know if he's going to be consistent enough at keeping him in that particular role because I thought he was going to do that with Micah, keeping him inside and outside, just kind of move him around, and he just kept him on the edge. And it kind of ruined his ability of what he was capable of doing.
So I was just looking up on the King Classic scoring system, and Frankie Luvu finished just outside of a number 2 linebacker. He finished as a high number 3, number 26, basically. Aaron, based on the potential usage, does he go that high, particularly if he gets used on the edge more like they did Micah Parsons, and he's not going to be in the position to get as many tackles? Does he fall down, or you think having him on the edge is better for him from a fantasy perspective?
I think I like him back and forth, like they were saying. I like him on the inside, outside. So if he's getting stuck in one spot, I think he falls a little bit. I'm still drafting him pretty high. What did you say he finished last year? Top 20, 24?
He finished number 26 on the Kings Classic scoring last year.
So I feel comfortable in the 20 to 25 range, so that doesn't scare me. I think that if they make him a little more versatile and move him all over, he's inside my top 20. But until we see how he plays it, I think I'm going to have him just outside the top 20. But for me, the more interesting question here is what the heck is Carolina doing? They let 2 elite defenders walk today, basically. They trade Burns and let Luvu walk. What are they doing?
Well, let's take a look at that real quick here. We're going to go to the Carolina's depth chart for a second here, folks. Let's just ask that question, and particularly as Saints fans, we'll make fun of them a little bit here.
Oh, no, it's wonderful. Saints.
Yellow is all free agents. Yellow versus last year's roster. Blank spots are people that have moved on. You do have a few people in the injured reserve spot like Shaq, but even he is a free agent. They don't have anything on defense. This is really rough. The one positive for their offensive players is they may be trailing a heck of a lot based on looking at this.
They don't have anything on offense.
I think there's your answer to the Carolina one.
Yeah.
Well, they have the number 1 overall pick.
Yeah, next year too.
Oh no, that's right. They traded that number 1 overall pick.
Well, they'll get it next year.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They'll have a chance yet again. Wow, that is a great point.
That's gross.
Okay, so I wanted to switch to Miami. Yeah, that was gross looking for those. If you're in a listen only mode right now, if you have a chance to view the video later and kind of look at that depth chart I just shared, have your barf bag ready from the airplanes. So that's what you're going to need, particularly if you're a Carolina fan. All right, let's switch to some of the Miami Dolphins signings. And so very interesting. Of course, they had Chubb and Jalen Phillips, who ended up on an IR at the end of the year. They lost Christian Wilkins. They release Agba. Raekwon Davis is a free agent. They lose Van Ginkel. And who do they sign? Oh, and they let go of Jerome Baker as well. So they signed Anthony Walker. They signed Jordan Brooks as well. They have David Long. So this is interesting. Do you think they signed Jordan Brooks with the intent of putting him on the edge with both Chubb and Phillips injured and likely or potentially missing the first part of the year? Or does Brooks go to the inside along with Walker and Long's the odd man out? Sean, we'll start with you on this one. What are your thoughts? Because you are the Miami fan after all.
Yeah, I think Brooks is there with the intention to start in the middle. Long was kind of the odd man out last year when Van Ginkel was in. Or when Jalen Phillips was healthy, Van Ginkel was playing more inside linebacker, kind of taking a lot of that time from David Long. It wasn't until Phillips got hurt that they moved Van Ginkel out and David Long got more playing time. So for whatever reason, they do not feel super confident with David Long. I do see him getting a rotational job, probably along with Anthony Walker. I can see those guys rotating. Walker's been banged up for years now. I wouldn't be surprised if he's injured this preseason. I'm not wishing an injury on anybody, but he seems to be made of glass. So it's a bit of a mess there. I really thought Baker would come back, especially with the way they would blitz him and use him in the passing game there. This Miami defense is hurting a lot. Christian Wilkins is gone, and both your edge rushers are fighting the odds to get back by the beginning of the season. So,
not to mention Xavier Howard was released as well. So, okay, Sean, I'm going to ask you to rank them. Long, Brooks, Walker, from a fantasy football, from an IDP perspective, who are the top 3 scorers in order of those 3?
Brooks is number 1 for me. And then I wouldn't be too comfortable taking Long or Walker. I'm leaning Long over Walker. But if redraft, I'm probably taking a shot on Brooks, and I'm staying away from the others until I see something probably in that first quarter of the season. If somebody emerges, maybe go after them then. But until that point, I'm staying away from most of this.
Aaron, I see you shaking your head. You agree with that assessment?
Yeah, the answer for me was Brooks and then waiver wire. They were right up there with Carolina. I don't know what their approach was here on defense. Let the defense get gutted, bring in Brooks, and then just hope Tua in the offense has the ball the whole game. I don't understand what they're doing here, and Brooks is the only one I'm interested in.
Okay. Steve, do you make it a trifecta?
Yeah, Brooks would be the only one that has any value. And realistically, let's be honest, Dolphins don't have any money to spend to keep this team intact. You still got to figure out what you're going to do with Tua, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, you got that situation coming up. Like, they had to make some moves, unfortunately, and losing like Wilkins was big, but you knew you couldn't sign him. So, but Brooks I still think he has some value, especially in redraft and definitely in Dynasty. I think he's going to have the really only value coming out of that defense right now.
Okay, thanks, gentlemen. Okay, so I just want to interject real quick for our listening audience right now. One of the things to make you aware of is over at IDP Plus, we have a special going. $1 for the first month using the code MOCKDRAFT. You can get access to all the outstanding work of people such as these gentlemen here. You get access to our rankings, our tools, and so forth. So definitely worth it. $1 to try us out for 30 days. Pretty incredible offer. The other thing I wanted to mention too is that we have a mailbag live stream tomorrow at 2:00 Eastern time. You can submit to mailbag@idpguys.org, and those gentlemen will answer your questions during that show tomorrow. That's Tuesday at 2:00 Eastern time. That's PM, not AM, for you late night party animals that are staying up all night watching all the free agencies during the night. All right, so Arizona was kind of active today. They signed Justin Jones, Bilo Nichols. They signed Mac the Knife Wilson, and they actually even signed Sean Murphy Bunting as well. Any of those do anything for you? Like, and listen, I'm seeing some smiles. I'm seeing some shaking the head, nose. Okay, Aaron, we'll go with you first this time.
My answer is going to be very quick. It was they moved the needle so little for me that when you said that, I looked at my sheet and said, I don't have Arizona doing anything. I didn't even make a note. I got Murphy Bunting down, but other than that, I didn't even think they were noteworthy who they added. They're not on my top 12 at any of the positions. So no, I'm not in on what Arizona did at all.
Steve, Mac Wilson, if he gets some playing time in the middle there, I mean, Kaiser White was, a number 3 linebacker at times this year. Even when Chris Barnes substituted in, or Zeke Turner, they all, the defense may be fun with some points there. Is he worth a flyer to you even?
Maybe if you got, let's just say you've got plenty of linebacker positions you've got to fill in a 12-man league, it's possible. I don't know. I mean, maybe even Budda Baker was the last time I had anybody relevant from Arizona on the defensive side. It's been a while. Just none of those guys really just kind of shine. They've just struggled. And even Budda, I kind of stayed away in the last couple of years. So I kind of like Aaron. I don't know if as far as Arizona becomes valuable, it's on their offensive side in fantasy, then I do believe in their defensive side.
Okay. All right, great. Thank you. Okay, so earlier on the show, Bryce Huff's name was brought up. And so let's talk about the Eagles and Bryce Huff and what's happening there and some of your recommendations. Okay, so Josh Sweat, Philadelphia was taking trade offers on him. Hassan Reddick, given permission to seek a trade. And then today they go and sign Bryce Huff, who was a situational pass rusher, and Zach freaking Bond of the New Orleans Saints also signed with the Eagles. Steve, let's start with you. Make heads or tails of what's going on at the edge position for the Eagles for our audience, and give them some of your recommendations, and we'll have Sean and Aaron do the same here.
Yeah, I'm not sure what they are actually doing. Because I mean, you just lost, what, Fletcher Cox is retired, right? That's a big name coming out of that defense in that locker room. They're looking to get rid of some pieces, and I understand like they struggled defensively last year, and they moved on through several defensive coordinators last year. Maybe they're just trying to figure something out, so they're getting some players there. I expected them to actually have a bigger splash when it came to the defensive side. I expected them to go after. Actually, I thought they were going to get Xavier McKinney, or even Gardner Johnson possibly coming back. Like I was waiting for some moves like that to have some kind of splash for the Eagles, because they've done a really good job. You've got to give them credit in their front office. They've done a really good job of getting talent to the team, and they've got to fix that defensive side, because they couldn't. I mean, 2 years ago removed, they were one of the best defensive teams when it came to sacks. And then last year, they didn't really do anything. So that's why the whole, hey, let's get rid of what we've got. Let's bring in a guy like Huff in. Huff has the chance to actually be a starter if they do move the pieces they're expecting to. And I think because the name isn't quite there, that he's going to be somebody you might be able to get a late flyer and actually end up doing pretty well for you.
So, Sean, who are the two starting defensive ends for Philadelphia for Game 1 this coming year here in September? Is it Sweat, Reddick, Bond, Huff, Nolan Smith? Which of those two are starting?
I'm leaning Huff here.
Our audience wants to know.
Yeah, I'm leaning Huff because I think skill set wise, I think he is very similar to Reddick. He's kind of the poor man's Reddick there. So I could actually see Reddick leaving. So I'm leaning Huff and Sweat just based on that. If he does stay, let's say Reddick stays, I could see this going back to a rotational thing that they had a couple of years ago. When they went to the Super Bowl, that defensive line was moving, and that's where Reddick got all of his sacks. He was coming in fresher. So I could see that becoming another rotation. And honestly, if it becomes that, I would steer away for a while until somebody kind of emerges.
And I forgot to mention Nolan Smith as well, their first rounder last year from Georgia. What's interesting, both Huff and Smith, while very good pass rushers, are a little bit light in the tush, for lack of a better term. They're not exactly you're going to hold up the edge very strongly. Aaron, you agree? Is it Sweat and Huff when we start next year with Philadelphia, or you have different thoughts?
No, it's got to be those
two. Or you
two.
think it's going to be rotation?
No, it's going to be them with Reddick moving on. But I don't understand what they were doing here. I thought they'd spend the money and load up on defensive players. Instead, they go out and make a splash on a luxury position with a veteran running back. Like, I get it. They need a running back with Swift going, but they could have drafted one. And this feels like them just completely overreacting to their defense imploding last year. And so
feels desperate.
Feels like, I feel like they paid more than they needed to on Huff for a career year. And I'm not really sure I'm on board with it. I think this is just going to make things worse. But we do have a big breaking signing here as we're going. Jalen Reagor signs with the Patriots. I know, stop the presses. That's groundbreaking. So I thought I'd throw that in. It's Eagles related.
You know what?
There you go.
I am speechless that Reagor, that breaking news there. I don't know how to digest that one, but maybe we'll come back to that one a little later.
Are you speechless that he's still in the NFL? Is that the part that's speechless?
I'm speechless that the Eagles somehow picked him over Justin Jefferson a few years ago. But anyway, maybe on our rookie show we could talk about the fact how everybody was saying Justin Jefferson couldn't play on the outside, and so that's why he fell to the 21st pick, if I remember correctly. And now those same things are being said about Malik Neighbors from LSU, but he can't play on the outside, and somebody will get a steal if he falls. I digress with my LSU stuff. Okay, so so on the 49ers, excuse me, on the Giants front, let's make a little bit more fun of Carolina for a second. Brian Burns goes from Carolina to the Giants. They could have had 2 firsts and a second, presumably or supposedly from the Rams. And instead they decided to hold him so that they can still get the first pick in the draft and have the worst record in the league and then trade him for a second and a fifth. Logically makes perfect sense. Now, does going to the Giants and being paired with Thibodeau actually help Burns' productivity? Or do you think, hey, he got the paycheck and it'd be interesting to see if he's motivated? So thoughts on that, Steve?
Well, he does get to play against, the Cowboys, and our right tackle seems to just let everybody hit Dak Prescott. So he's at least guaranteed 2 or 3 sacks those games. So I think it's actually a really good move for Brian Burns. Great move for the Giants because you also have Dexter Lawrence in the middle as well. So like that defensive line is actually pretty scary. So when it comes to trying to defend, I mean, you can move both of them around. You got Thibodeau or Brian Burns. You can move them back and forth and kind of see which one has the better day. Either one will have some success. So I don't think it's a scary thing at all for him getting this pay. I think it's good for him. Obviously, New York can be a little bit crazy when it comes to the media and just adjusting to that whole environment. But I think it will be good for him. I think it's good for the Giants.
So Aaron, Azeez Ojulari, 2nd round pick a year ago, 2 years ago, he'll be going to his 3rd year here. Actually, when he's played and on the field, has been extremely productive from an efficiency perspective in terms of sacks per snap played and so forth. What kind of message is this? And is there a risk that one of these folks gets moved on the inside? You see all of them on the field, or does this mean you think Azeez is getting benched and won't see the playing time? And if you have him in a dynasty league, maybe it's time to see what you can get for him.
I don't think it's necessarily reflective of how they feel about Ojulari's play. It's just that he's always hurt. At some point, they just have to accept that he's never healthy and never on the field. So even if they believe in him, maybe, bringing some added help here, and maybe that'll get him to toughen up, kind of like what Detroit did with DeAndre Swift. Go somewhere else and maybe, once we kick you out of town, maybe you'll learn to play through it. But I don't know. I thought Ojulari was good, but like I said, he's never on the field. So that's what this boils down to for me. It's just he's plenty talented. They believe in him. It's just keep him on the field. So Burns was there. And like you said, Carolina decided to troll the NFL and just give him away. So why not? It's nothing to lose. It's, what was it? You said 3rd and a 6th?
2nd and a 5th.
Same thing. Whatever.
All right, one more defensive player, then we're going to switch to the offensive side. Sean, unless you want to say something there.
No, I think they nailed it. It's a great spot. The Eagles don't look good on offensive line. The Cowboys don't, and we've seen what Washington was last year. These guys should eat.
Exactly. Now, if they have a quarterback, we'll talk about that another time. Jordan Hicks going to the Browns. Very productive player with the Vikings, very productive in the Flores system and actually in the Zimmer system before that. Is he a top 36 linebacker with this move to the Browns? Sean?
I'll say yes. He's probably a top 25, maybe a little higher than that. 20-25 sounds good. He's got a solid line in front of him. So he should be pretty clean to get these tackles. I like it. If he can stay healthy. I will throw that in there. And we lost Ricky.
Did we? I was going to say, he went pretty quiet. He's really thinking this through.
Yeah, I was like, oh, man, I blew his mind. There was nothing. There was no great analysis in there.
Yeah. I think he's top 20 for me.
Sorry about
tackle that. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead, Aaron.
Oh no, I was just trying to fill some airspace there. Those tackle numbers, especially like if you get a bonus for tackles, he's got to be top 20. Like what is it? Triple digit tackles every year. He's a machine. He's consistent. He's just a set it and forget it. I'm in for him for sure.
Well, we got time, Joe. You want to throw anything in there?
I mean,
Or Steve?
I was hoping he'd go to Dallas.
All right.
Bring him in with Zimmer.
That'd be a good match, yeah, for sure.
But just keep that scheme going, you know.
Is he back?
I think he's getting a delay on us.
Gentlemen,
What's happening.
Yeah, Ricky got a delay, but hopefully he's back. So one of the questions, we're going to switch to offense now, and thank you guys for filling the airtime. So one of the things that when I asked you your question earlier about what was your biggest surprise of the day, my biggest surprise I didn't share and I saved it till now was the running backs and the salaries that they got and the quickness of which these signings occurred. I must admit that I was not expecting the running back dominoes to fall like they did. And I expected the salaries, and we're not going to get into the salaries in too much details, but I didn't expect them to be as high. So a big win for the running backs today overall compared to what I was expecting, to be honest with you. So now sticking with the running backs, DeAndre Swift, the first one signed with the Bears, even though they have Khalil Herbert, Rashawn Johnson. Okay, Steve, we're going to start with you because I see you nodding your head there. Thoughts on Swift? Is this a lateral? Is this better for him? Is it worse for him? My gut feels like it's neutral to worse because he's certainly going to be behind a worse offensive line. But your thoughts, Steve?
I think it's a worse situation. Even though he was in a good situation when it came to Philly, let's be honest, he never got a touchdown. He never had the chance to whenever he got down to that 1 yard line. So he could have been an even bigger impact last season had it not been for the brotherly push or whatever you want to call it. But I do think it's a loss. I do think that Chicago is probably going to use actually all three running backs, especially since, we're not sure what's going on with Justin Fields, but we're expecting Caleb Williams to be there. So they're going to use the running game, don't get me wrong, to help, ease Caleb into the NFL and get him situated. But I don't like this move at all for DeAndre.
Darren, you agree?
It gets him away from the tush push. That's a bonus. I was more not so much disappointed in what it's going to hurt Swift. I'm a Rashawn Johnson guy. I was just waiting for him to have a second-year breakout, and I hate this. I assume this means that Khalil Herbert's not going to be a thing, but I don't know. If this is a three-headed backfield, I hate it. If it's a two-headed backfield, I probably still hate it. I don't like it for any of them. Like you said, could be a rookie quarterback, could be Justin Fields. There's no real talent on the offensive side of the ball for pass catching, really. DJ Moore, but I don't know. The only thing you could say is it gets him away from the tush push, and maybe he scores a goal line touchdown. But other than that, I don't like it for any of the running backs in this backfield.
I agree with Aaron.
He's frozen.
I think it's a total mess there, and it's not good for fantasy owners. We're not going to be able to know whose week it is until it's too late.
So speaking of tush push, Saquon Barkley going to the Eagles. Not that he scored 20 touchdowns with the Giants, but is this going to mean Hurts and the tush push is going to be used less to try and not hurt him? Or are they going to use Barkley more? Is Barkley with the Eagles a top 5, a top 12 running back as a result of the whole Hurts and the tush push near the goal line? And there was a lot of them. I believe it was 18, if I remember correctly. I could be wrong, but that's probably in the ballpark. So, Sean, we'll start with you, then we'll go around the horn. Barkley, where do you have him? Top 5, 10, 15, et cetera, as a running back? Now he's with the Eagles.
I'll go top 12 to 15. That sounds okay. The all these moves by the Eagles just feel desperate. Like I feel like what Nick Sirianni is kind of losing his mind here. If he's involved in a lot of these, I feel like he feels it slipping away, and he's just grasping at anything and everything. I wouldn't be surprised if they completely redo their offense with Jason Kelsey, leaving as well. They may shift to more run heavy and preserving Hurts a little more. Sounds good anyway, right?
Yeah. Aaron?
That was my first thought, was that maybe with Kelsey retiring, they want to shift away from Jalen Hurts and the tush push and go more run heavy. So with the better offensive line, and if you assume that, it could be a bump. But at the same time, there's more weapons and more talent to spread it around to the Eagles than there ever was in the Giants. So I think it's probably a lateral move again. That's what I said earlier in the show, though. I don't think any of the free agents themselves were really big winners. Like, I thought Jacobs did well and is in a better situation. Everyone else, I think there's a lot of laterals for fantasy. And I have exactly what you said. I have him 12 to 15. I don't have him at probably 13 to 15. I don't want him as a top 12 running back right now.
Sure.
Well, Steve, I'm going to change the question on you then. Jalen Hurts, who is typically top 2, top 3 quarterback, do you lower him down now because of the risk of they're going to hand it to Barkley and give him those touchdowns, and Hurts might score less of them to protect him? Because it seems like the last 2 years he's been injured late in the year.
Yes, I lowered Hurts even before the Barkley news. I lowered him with Kelsey retiring, losing him at the center, not only just to help get the protections right, was also the anchor when it came to that goal line push. So, yeah, and I think they're going to change that. I mean, don't get me wrong, they're going to attempt it because obviously that's been so successful for them. I'm curious who they're going to replace Kelsey with, but I was lowering him anyways. He regressed when it came to the passing side. You can see it in AJ Brown's frustrations. You can see it in how the offense played. Like, they just were horrendous when it came to last season. So I'm not putting him outside the top 10, but I lowered him down in my latest rankings. I had him at QB 8.
Wow. So, and you bring up a good point. The question was their offense had to become so predictable and the coordinator didn't adjust, and that's why they fired the coordinator and brought in Kellen Moore? Or was it because he regressed? It's going to be really interesting to see. But I have a feeling several people were knocking down at least a few pegs to your point there. Okay, let's talk about those Ty J. Spears shares that a lot of people have. So is Pollard and Spears going to be a platoon? Or is Pollard? It's going to be more Pollard 70 and Spears 30. Sean,
I do think it'll be heavy on the Pollard side. Looking at Spears' injury last year, I know it was a lot of experts were talking about how severe it actually was, or more how similar I think it was to Todd Gurley's knee injury, and it wasn't long after that, he had to hang it up. So that's got me concerned already. And then Pollard coming in, I think Pollard takes the lead here. And, I think Spears will either be slowly worked in or kind of where he was with Derrick Henry in there. But their skill sets are so similar. Do you really need to pull Pollard off?
interesting. So let's go back to you, Steve, on that one. You agree with Sean that they spent that money on Pollard, so he'll get more of the lion's share, more as opposed to a 50-50 split?
Yeah, again, this was my biggest surprise. I thought Pollard coming to Tennessee made no sense when you had a very similar back in that backfield already. They both are great pass catchers. They both have some explosive plays. They aren't pounding ground, like type of running backs that can get you that extra yard. So I'm kind of surprised. I do think it's going to be more of a 65-35 type of thing. I do think that's going to be scary for both of them. Who are you afraid of? As far as the passing game, yeah, you got D-Hop, you got Will Levis at your quarterback. I mean, I'm staying away from actually a lot of these players when it comes to redraft, or really late. Maybe you grab, Pollard and that running back dead zone spot, maybe. But I'm afraid to touch any of these guys when it comes to fantasy.
Okay. Well, so now there was a little bit of a ring around the rosy. So Gus Edwards goes from Baltimore to the Chargers. Austin Eckler goes from the Chargers to the Commanders. Antonio Gibson goes from the Commanders over to the Patriots. There was nothing from Patriots to Baltimore, but you kind of get the idea there. Of those three, Edwards, Eckler, Antonio Gibson, Aaron, rank them for me in terms of your redrafting and you're ranking those three.
Well, I
who are
think
your
you're going to
top
get to complete the circle because I think it's going to be Derrick Henry to the Ravens. So I think that'll be your fourth one to complete your Ravens connection. But okay, so I had Eckler, Gibson, Edwards. I don't know, but some of these are mystifying me. This is why, though, but back to Spears, this is why we don't buy players in the offseason before the draft. We did the same thing with Zamir White. Like Spears is up to RB15 on Keep Trade Cut. Between him and Zamir White in the two situations, there was no way they weren't going to draft or add someone in free agency. I'm not particularly high on Eckler, Gibson, or Edwards, but I think Eckler is still easily the best of the three. And then it would be Gibson, although I don't know. I see him as the pass catching back there. I think that's the only thing he does well, but that scares me because apparently that's what Ramondre Stevenson does well. So if they're not going to bring him in to be the pass catching back, why did they sign him in New England? That one mystifies me. It's the same as you were saying with Spears. I liked him better with Henry there because they had opposite skill sets. Why are these teams bringing in backs that do the same thing? I don't understand some of these moves. I don't understand it.
Sean?
I'm with you. It is mystifying. Gus Edwards would have made more sense there in New England, I think. But I'm really curious how the Chargers are going to use Edwards, if they are going to kind of pound him a little more than Eckler and all that stuff. So all these situations look like rotational anyway. I'm going to lean Edwards as my favorite here, just because I do not know what Eckler still has left. I mean, he looked bad last year, slow, like age is catching up to him. So depending on how that offense uses him, I think he's going to be low touches with probably some highly productive days. Gibson, I'm with Aaron. I think he is the pass catcher here, but again, so was Stevenson. So it's a bit of a mess. I think if anything, they're killing the value of everybody connected with them. So it drops Stevenson and Gibson, I think, as far as that goes. But I see Edwards as having the clearest path to touches.
Do you believe that when they inevitably draft Blake Corum? You know what's going to happen. Harbaugh there. It's happening.
That's true. I didn't even think about that. That's yeah, why not? He's gonna vulture all the touchdowns then. So Edwards is still that guy.
Well, if I remember correctly, Edwards has never had over 200 carries in a year. Someone can fact check me on that. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure that's correct. So right there, that tells you he's probably in line for a platoon situation, most likely. Is it Corum, which is, probably if you look at Vegas odds, I'm sure with the Harbaugh connection that there's, that's the betting favorite. But they'll probably add another running back to Edwards, which will probably impact his value as well.
198
Speaking
last
of value,
year. His previous high was 144. Sorry to interrupt.
Oh, thank you, Aaron. Appreciate the on the spot. And I made it by 2 carries, but I was right. That's great.
All that matters. You were right.
Devin. That's right. And Sean knows I'm right all the time, right, Sean? If you join us for our start shit. So
I've heard of it. We've never fact checked it, but it's been brought up.
I believe we have fact checked some of that, but I digress. Devin Singletary.
Let's move on.
Yeah, exactly. Devin Singletary to the Giants. Certainly not Saquon Barkley. Is he a top 36 running back with the Giants team? They did sign 2 offensive linemen today, but top 36, top 24. What do you think, Steve?
No, he might squeak into like potential RB2. I don't care that he went to a Giants team that has no running back currently with him really as far as competition goes. You don't know what the quarterback situation is. You still got Daniel Jones back there. The offensive line, even though they've made some signings, usually takes a couple months to gel in season. It does. Those guys have to work, really fully trust each other. You've got no weapons on the outside that anyone is afraid of. Darren Waller can't stay healthy. I mean, I like Singletary. Don't get me wrong. I wish he had stayed in Buffalo and they actually used the running back properly, but they don't know how to do that. Yeah, but I will say, Singletary leaving, I still have a lot of shares of Dameon Pierce. Hopefully, nothing changes there, and he'll have some strong value.
Yeah, that's my bet where Aaron Jones is going to end up, though, is in Houston.
I need Aaron Jones in Dallas. He has been the Dallas killer. I need him in Dallas.
That's an interesting thought as well. But I think Aaron mentioned earlier he saw Derrick Henry going to Baltimore. I see Henry with a star on his helmet, but we'll see on that. That'll be interesting. All right, let's shift quickly to wide receivers. We only have a few minutes left. The Jacksonville Jaguars, Gabe Davis, Devin Duvernay to go along with Christian Kirk, Zay Jones. Looks like Calvin Ridley is now out the door. So Daniil Hunter in Minnesota will be moving on as they've signed replacements. Seems like Jacksonville's done the same thing. Who's the number one wide receiver for the team? Is it still Christian Kirk or is it Gabe Davis? Aaron.
It's Christian Kirk. I'm not a big fan of any of these moves today. This was not a good day of free agency. I was saying this on my show that I didn't think it was possible for me to like a wide receiver less for Trevor Lawrence than Calvin Ridley. They said, hold my beer, and they signed Gabe Davis. I no, thank you. I'm not interested. Give me Christian Kirk here. I didn't want Gabe Davis with Josh Allen heaving up YOLO balls. I want nothing to do with this. This is going to send his hype up, and everyone, no, I'm out. I'm not doing this anymore. He scored 4 touchdowns in a playoff game 3 years ago, and he's done nothing since. I'm out. No, thank you.
Other than that, you have no strong opinion on that one, right?
No, none whatsoever.
Steve, any counterpoints or disagree? Or you agree? Excuse me.
I like Aaron said. I do think him going to Jacksonville, people are going to buy him way ahead of where he really should fall. But I secretly kind of like it. Christian Kirk is the obvious wide receiver one on this team, but I kind of like it. I don't know what it is, but I feel like this is going to be Gabe Davis's revenge tour. I think he's finally going to actually decide to, figure out how to, catch the ball, run his routes properly. I like this for him. Doug Peterson is a great offensive minded coach. I think he does a great job of getting this team together. I think he's going to actually do fairly well. I'm not hating it completely, but I do think that people are going to draft him a little bit too early to where he really should land. If you could get him late, I actually think it's going to be a nice little steal. But like everything else, Gabe Davis will have a 100-yard game, 3 touchdowns, and the next week he won't show up, and everyone's going to be pissed off again. So that's just the life of Gabe Davis.
Sort of like Deshaun Jackson. He'd have this massive game every 4 or 5 weeks, and you loved it when you had him, and then you cursed him those other weeks when you had him in your lineup and he was giving you very little. Hayden just posted, we mentioned it briefly earlier, but Hayden just posted Jalen Reagor, Patriots re-signed. And I think that's what happened to my internet connection just now a little bit earlier when I froze. I think it was taken down StreamYard and Twitter and so forth. Was everybody was tweeting about the Jalen Reagor signing. Thank you for sharing that with us, Hayden. Appreciate that. Okay, so let's talk about tight ends real quick in the last minute or so here. Do any of these move the needle and you say, this one might be worth a flyer as a potential high-end number 2 tight end? Will Dissly to the Chargers, Zach Ertz earlier to the Commanders, Drew Sample with Cincinnati, Kobe Parkinson to the Rams, Charlie freaking Werner to the Falcons, and Noah Fant resigning with Seattle. Any of those, when you saw that, you said, oh, wow. Aaron, you got your hand up. Go.
Yeah, yes, please. Can I field this one?
Yes.
Last week in my preparation, I did a position-by-position free agent top 10. My top number 1 free agent tight end was Logan Thomas. I think that should answer the question here. Logan Thomas. That's what the free agent tight end position looked like. I have no interest. I had some hope for Noah Fant, and then he went back to Seattle, and that was dead. So I don't want any of these guys. Aside from the best I hope I had was Jonnu. Jonnu has maybe just, pray that he's in there so much protecting Tua from concussion as a blocker. They brought back Teron Armstead. Maybe he's just in there, and like I said, he gets the occasional dump off when Tua's trying not to take any contact, and he puts up the occasional game as a injury replacement. But when my top two options out of my mouth were Logan Thomas and Jonnu Smith, it's not good. Not good.
Yeah. Steve, did any of those tickle your fancy, man?
The only one I was looking at the tight ends, obviously Schultz is a strong, re-sign that makes total sense for the Texans. And he'll could potentially be a top 10 tight end. I do think a lot of people forget, the injury that happened to Higbee. That was pretty big for the Rams. I know no one's going to draft Parkinson, but he may be a nice little deep league grab if if you need to grab something. But other than that, I mean, I do like Jonnu coming to Miami. I think he's going to actually be used more than I think people expect. I think he actually has some decent value, but he's not going to scratch the top 12. Like, I think he'll be a 15 to 18 type of range when it comes to the season. Really, Schultz was the only one that had any value.
Yeah, I purposely left him off the list, but you're absolutely right. Though, actually, if there's one name I do like on this list as a potential sleeper, is Parkinson. He's demonstrated the athletic ability. Higbee had that late season ACL injury. Davis Allen, there's a reason they signed Parkinson. They just don't have the confidence in Davis Allen. So in that McVay offense, there's a chance there. So if there's someone maybe sneaking in the high end 2 tight end range, for me, it might be Parkinson. And, he'll be 25, maybe 26 in that going to his 5th year. That 25, 26 age year group is when tight ends, sometimes the light does go on for them. So that would be the one I'd probably mention.
Okay. Nobody liked Will Dissly to the Chargers.
I don't like anybody on the Chargers. Please get rid of Herbert, get rid of Keenan, get Keenan Allen to a real team, and let's move on.
Yeah, well, it'll be interesting to see where Keenan Allen and Mike Williams goes as we progress here through the week and as we get towards draft season as well. Rougarou just joined in. Good evening, gents. Ricky, I finished my bag and ready for the season. LOL. Glad to hear it, man. We are here too. That's why free agency starts and you see our show live, and there'll be more of these. We'll be having our draft shows. We'll have our mailbag shows, as I mentioned earlier, tomorrow at 2:00 Eastern. So a lot of great content coming on our YouTube channel. So Rougarou, please join in and love your activity when you do. So we're going to call it a wrap here at a little bit over an hour. I want to thank my guests, Sean, Steve, and Aaron. Once again, Sean's at Sean8386. Steve is at Average Joe's FF, and Aaron is at the Football FF Mad Scientist, and I'm at Ricky Rod 66. Reminding everybody one more time too, $1 with the code Mock Draft gets you IDP Plus, formerly IDP Guys, gets you a month access of everything for $1. Come check us out. With that, gentlemen, y'all did an outstanding job, and what I really liked is the way y'all gave tremendous context to our listeners in terms of where do we see them falling in the fantasy world, and that's going to be important here as we move forward. It's going to be really helpful for our customers. So thank you again for joining. We plan on doing another one of these on Wednesday. So for all our listeners out there, please join us and look forward to seeing you then. With that, take care, be kind to one another, and we'll talk to y'all soon.